We're live. Hello, Eric.
We're live. Hey, everybody. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you. And thank you, Tyson and Heather and everybody who put this event together. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person. It's actually astonishing to me that we are able to do events like this in places like Amsterdam. You've hosted me so generously before and have always had such a good time. I'm not there for two reasons. The first is I have young children at home, and I made the decision when my son was born that I was going to cut back on the travel. I used to travel all the time, trying to spread this message constantly, 24/7, and I've made the choice to do that. I think that's important for us to do that if we're going to have a more equitable society that both men and women are able to make family and staying with family a focus. So I've made that choice. It means that I don't get to have fun with you today, but also there's a second reason that I'm actually really happy that you're able to do this event without me, and that is that the Lean Startup movement, as it's grown, it's not about me. So I'm honored, honestly, to be here with you today. I'm so glad so many people, come up to me as I travel around the world, tell me how much Lean Startup has meant to them. But I'm not the one that did it. What made Lean Startup special is not that I'm a great writer or some important person. What has made it remarkable is people like you've already, heard from, like Sal and Alex and so many. Tendai is there, and I want to go through the whole agenda, but so many people who've been at the summit this year who have been building this community in a grassroots way for many years, and they don't get the same accolades all the time and the same spotlight that those of us who are, get to be the face of the movement sometimes get, but they're the ones who did the real work. You are the ones who've done the real work to make this meaningful. So this is not a cult. It's not a cult of personality. It's not, whether you like me personally or not is irrelevant. These ideas are meant to be scientific. And what that means is that we offer a theoretical framework that we think can work for you and hopefully in your company, and you know many stories and friends now who've put it into practice. But it's not just, hey, like a lot of business stuff, it's like, oh yeah, if you just do my one thing, then you'll make a lot of money and you'll be rich just like I did. That's not what we're all about. Scientific theory means the theory makes predictions, concrete, specific predictions about what will happen for good or ill if you put these ideas into practice. And in order to find out whether what we are saying makes sense, you have to run the experiment yourself. You cannot take anybody's word for it. I think entrepreneurial ventures are too important. Startups are too important. They're too precious to waste on taking somebody's word for something. We have to actually run the experiment. And so I'm very grateful to all of you who are running those experiments. And I can't even tell you the diversity of kinds of projects now that I hear from. I know even who we have in the audience today, people not just doing traditional kind of tech startups or small business. You have people who are doing nonprofits or working in the social sector. Of course, lately we've been making news for bringing lean startup ideas into some of the world's largest companies, into governments, municipal governments. There's now a whole incredible movement of people in the national defense and intelligence communities on both sides of the Atlantic who have taken these ideas to heart. So it's been really remarkable to see the ideas spread from industry to industry, sector to sector, region to region. And yet the only reason that that's possible, the only reason that works is because each practitioner anew has to take the principles and try to translate them into specific tactics that make sense in their industry. We can't just copy each other. We actually have to do some thinking, which, I know mixing thoughts in business is not always everyone's favorite thing to try, but that's, I think distinctively in the broader lean movement, we've tried to be thoughtful about the way that we work and not just make it about making money, not just make it about this or that, but really to make it about impact. And I want to just say a few words about the word impact, because we have a whole offshoot we call Lean Impact. There's a Lean Impact book coming out this fall. And for those who are in the nonprofit sector and working in foundations and all kinds of service organizations, they're used to thinking about things in terms of impact, and lean startup concepts can be translated to the social sector very effectively. And we're starting to see case studies about that. But I lovingly refer to the people in that sector as the intentional not-for-profits. As by contrast to my friends here in Silicon Valley, who often we wind up running unintentional not-for-profits. And that's, works until it doesn't work. And yet in even the most famous success startups that you have heard of, there's that long, flat part of the hockey stick that we talk so much about in Lean Startup, where you need minimum viable products and experimentation and innovation accounting and leading indicators, are all the mechanics to figure out if you're on track, you're making progress. And I really think that in that flat part of the hockey stick, before we have this massive, we always joke about the overnight success that's like 10 years in the making. If you ignore the first 3,000 days and nights, then you can still be an overnight success. During that time, there's no profit. There may not even be revenue. The metrics may be confusing. The vanity metrics may be incredibly small. So I think thinking about those days as really being impact oriented is really important. And that helps us unify both the tiny startup with the nonprofit, but also with the larger company, where we start to have subsidiaries and internal startups and projects that don't yet have profit. And we have a hard time using traditional management concepts to make any sense of those. So I just want to plant that seed to start to ask ourselves, in the work that we do, what is the impact that we want to have beyond profit, beyond revenue? What is the impact? And I think when we start to think that way, first of all, our experiments get better, but also we start to ask ourselves more important human questions about the work that we do. What is the impact that this product has on the human beings who use it every day? What do I want to see happen? What beyond money, what do I seek to change in the world through the work that I do every day? And when we start to ask those questions, that's especially urgent in the technology industry. And you're starting to see in the front pages of the paper, pretty much every day these days, what happens if we follow blindly without giving that some thought. So I think that this framework gives us some both a business effectiveness benefit from running vendor experiments, and also I would go so far as to call it a moral benefit from asking ourselves better and more important questions. So let me just tell you one story along these lines. It's not like the biggest, most important world-changing story ever. It's just something that happened to me the other day. And I think that the stakes for this are higher than we always give ourselves credit for, because it's not just about transforming established organizations. This really is a battle for the soul of the future of business. What are the kinds of organizations we're going to make in the future? If startups are going to hit product market fit and get large, I always laugh when people talk about startups as small companies. Not intentionally. Startups are trying to become large companies. And so they wind up recreating all the institutional problems that they were running away from, that they became entrepreneurs in the first place. So whether we're building new institutions or we're transforming, every organization is going through digital transformation right now. A management transformation is a prerequisite to do a digital transformation. So whatever reason we have for wanting to change, the question is, what is the blueprint that we're going to change into? And I was talking to a Silicon Valley founder who, when I first met them, they were in Y Combinator. So that I knew them when they were, the proverbial two guys in a garage. And then they graduated, and then they raised some money, and then they had some success, and they hit product market fit, and they now have, it must be 500 or 1,000 employees now. And they were working on a new product to try to bring their core offering into a new market. And anyway, not to make a long story short, they were having some difficulties. And the difficulties went a little bit like this. The founder had asked one of his product managers to go build an internal startup to go pursue this new product idea. And they given them some funding and said, look, you got carte blanche to think like an entrepreneur, go do anything you want, go nuts. And months went by. The founder's running a pretty big company now, so they're looking at the reports quarter by quarter. They don't have time to go investigate every project. They have a status update. Status update is status green for this project. And every night they went to sleep feeling good. They've made this investment in the future of their company, status green. And 6 months go by, and they're just, doing the old trick of management by walking around. Remember the Hewlett-Packard idea? They stumbled into the team's office that was working on this project. They said, oh, hey, how's it going? Status green. Give me the update after 6 months. What are customers saying about this bold and radical new product? And the team said, what do you mean customers? The people using the product, oh no, we don't have any customers yet. And he said, gosh, I guess we must have pivoted a lot then if it's not working. What's the problem? Tell me about the last couple of releases that you shipped so I can understand. And they're like, what do you mean shipped? Now the founder's really concerned. He's like, well, the thing that you do when you build products and ship, they're like, oh, we're definitely planning to ship. Don't get us wrong. But we're not ready to ship version 1 yet. Why not? Well, and he said, but I thought you said the status was green. We're on track. He's like, oh, we're very much on everything's on track. We've almost got the architecture group to signed off on our scalability plan. And we're very close now to having the branding group having signed off on the idea that this is not going to harm the parent company brand. And we're just finalizing, but finishing touches on the customer service plan to handle the volume. And the founder basically lost his cool and was like, "You have to be kidding me. Do you realize that if I had attempted to build this company in the first place, the way you idiots are building this product now, we wouldn't be having this conversation because the company would be dead." And the poor product manager was like, "No, I wasn't there. I'm supposed to magically know what you did when you founded this company. I don't know. I'm just following the rules as you've laid them down." And the founder was so upset. And of course they were calling me for advice. And I remember talking to them about, "Well, tell me about your time in Y Combinator. If you had tried that crap in Y Combinator, what would have happened?" And the founder's reflecting, and he said, "Oh, if I had said that to Paul Graham, he would have actually taken my head off. Like, he would have humiliated me in front of the whole group because I would have been delaying instead of building something that people want, following all the rules of Y Combinator." I said, "Okay, great." And he starts to talk himself. He's like, "Well, I never would have had the audacity to suggest such a bad plan to Paul because the whole setup of the program was designed to help me realize that would be a bad idea. They wrote all these essays. We had mentors and dinners. And of course, I'm part of a peer group of other people who are in the same stage as me. And every week we would compare progress." And he starts just enumerating all the things that he had as by ways of support as a seed stage founder. And I said, "Okay, great. How many of those supports have you replicated for your internal entrepreneurs?" And he looked at me and he had no idea what I was talking about. He was totally stunned by that question because that's not how he's used to thinking of himself. He's the entrepreneur, not this person that works for him. So he's the one with the great idea. He's the one that deserves support. He's the one who needs, and you start to go through the looking glass moment. We start to realize that in all of the startup hubs around the world, not just Silicon Valley, not just, New York and Austin and Boston, but certainly, in Amsterdam, in London, I've been to so many hubs. I was just at the Nordic Business Forum a few months ago, and I got to see this happening in Nordic countries. You see this happening in country after country after country, where people have realized that there's this set of management practices that can be used to stimulate innovation. And the kind of phase change that we're going through as a movement now is starting to realize that if we're going to talk about the blueprint of the truly modern company, if we're not about the soul of the future of business, we have to ask ourselves, how do we embed these practices? That they're not just quirky, funny things that entrepreneurs and their VCs do. These are management practices with very specific rules and requirements. How do we embed that way of working into the whole fabric of our organization so that every person that works for us and every person who works in our economy has the opportunity to pursue entrepreneurship as a calling? And that means every employee, every immigrant, every worker has to have that opportunity. That has huge implications for how we lead our companies as business leaders, the policies that we advocate. It's going to be a very, very big change to what it means to do business as we go through this transformation. But I don't think anything less will allow us to take advantage of the opportunities we see in the 21st century. So, sorry to ramble on and on. I hope that's people find that somewhat useful. I really would like to leave a few minutes for questions so we can have a bit of a conversation. I hope this will be the start of you not just having a conversation with me, a dialogue with me, but a conversation with each other. And really, once again, I thank you all so very much for having me. Thank you.
So I have this amazing cube here, which has a microphone in it that I'll be throwing at the people at the front of the room because I don't want to kill any of you. At the back of the room, there'll be people running around with microphones. Please put your hand up if you have some questions, and I'll get the mic to you. Don't be shy. It's okay. I
always look forward to the hypothetical questions. Someone's like, my friend's company's having this problem. It's okay. We all know.
Hi.
We've all been there.
You were just talking about that anecdotal thing about, that entrepreneur that doesn't have the internal entrepreneur.
Closer to you, Matt.
So I was wondering, what's the best DNA for somebody in leadership to have intrapreneurs? Should it be the founder, a manager, a leader? What does it take to be able to actually have entrepreneurs in your organization?
At your friend's company, I'm sure that they have a challenge of identifying who the entrepreneurs are. I'm familiar. So I got bad news for you. Every organization of any size I have ever met in my career, and I have actually worked directly with companies of every order of magnitude of size of company that we have in the world. And I mean, literally 2 guys in a garage, 20, 200, 2,000, 20,000, 200,000, into the millions. So I've seen it all that you can see. And in every organization, there already are incredible numbers of intrapreneurs running around, but they have to go underground. So when I meet middle managers, I usually tell them, hey, if you got assigned, God forbid, but if you got assigned one of these horrible projects that's like doomed to failure, the worst kind of project you can be assigned is the CEO woke up one morning and read Wired magazine and they got really excited about blockchain or something. God forbid. Machine learning, blockchain, drone, biohacking. And they assign your put somebody on a project. I want to do blockchain for our laundromat or whatever. And you get assigned, you have to have one of your team members has to go now pursue this project that is highly disruptive potential, but very unlikely to succeed. So it's like, who do you call to assign a project like that to? Every competent middle manager I ever meet has a little black book of the people in the organization, the secret people that you call when you're in this situation, because assigning a regular person to this project would be considered cruel and unusual. Who's the kind of person who likes to take these projects on? So most organizations already have a whole network of these entrepreneurs, and it's hard to figure out who they are from the outside because it's a psychographic characteristic, not a demographic characteristic. And the truth is, most people in most organizations feel compelled to leave their creativity at home. They actually go into hiding when they come into the office. They think if they admitted to people how creative they really are, it would harm their career advancement opportunities. So we pretty much just have to stop doing that and take advantage of the entrepreneurial talent that's all around us if we're willing to just kind of be honest about it. And we have to make it safe for people to admit that these little black books exist, which means it's safe to bring those people out of the shadows and tell them they can work with the company's blessing. I've never worked in an organization where there was a challenge in finding them. And anyone who experiences it as a challenge, I think you got to look at what are the management policies that cause people to feel the need to hide.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Another question from the room. Oh, there's somebody over there. I'm going to get a little bit closer to you. Here we go. Catch.
Thanks. Yeah. So a lot of leaders in the lean startup community mentioned the notion of ambidextrous organizations and how you need to separate execution from, seeking for a new business model from just exploitation. But in your book, The Startup Way,
Yeah.
I feel that you sort of don't make this distinction. You talk about integrating the entrepreneurship function into every part of the company. So if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, those memes on the internet that are like regular brain, enlightened brain, whatever, galaxy brain? Is that, everyone knows this? You guys still spend time on Reddit? Yes? Still a thing? I can't really see so many people in the audience, so I don't know if anyone has any idea what I'm talking about.
Hands up for people that know that. Yeah, there's a couple hands.
They do or they don't?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
most people don't.
Okay. So regular brain is that that there's just business. Business is business, and there's running a small business and running a laundromat is the same as running a multinational business. Enlightened brain is no. A startup is different than a big company. It's not just it's a fundamentally different thing. Genius brain is ambidextrous leadership, which is okay. Actually, not only is a startup different than a big company, but a big company contains multitudes within it, and so of course, any given project is either going to be an entrepreneurial search. I like to call them experimentation versus execution. An experimentation type project or a execution type project. But Alex, I think, uses the terminology of search, versus execute. Steve's always liked discovery versus execution. So, there's all of these different frameworks. Anyway, there's a framework of like there's X and there's Y, and they're two different things. You need to know the different things. But Galaxy Brain is that this spectrum is a spectrum. It's not a binary. And here I can prove it to you really easily. If you have a tiny startup with 5 customers, you already have the problem of trying to figure out how much should I serve my 5 existing customers versus how much should I tailor the product for the next 5 customers. There's no right answer to that question. We all struggle with it, but that is an execution question par excellence. So even the tiniest startup has a certain level of execution to it. And even the most boring, pathetic company that is like bureaucratic to the nth degree and is about to go out of business, there's a certain amount of search going on there too. Because even if you try to stamp out all the creativity, right? Like there were still the people trying to do digital cameras at Kodak. And I'm sure somebody at RIM had an iPhone prototype, working that nobody would pay attention to. So like the two things coexist. And actually what happens is as an organization scales, the ratio of execution to experimentation tends to shift from almost all experimentation eventually to almost all execution. And of course, in the book, I tried to lay out the theoretical framework for how we locate ourselves on that spectrum. And then how do we see if we actually get ourselves from 10% execution to 10% experimentation, right? We grow so large that we're mostly an execution business. Then how do we start to see the pieces of the organization that are still looking at experimentation as the seeds of new internal startups that can start the cycle over again? So yeah, I don't say that ambidextrous leadership, that concept is wrong. I just think seeing it as a duality is like not as advanced as seeing it as a spectrum. So I encourage you all to be Galaxy Brain if you can.
Thank you very much, Eric. We're out of time, unfortunately. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a big round of applause.